Hello everyone. I welcome all of you to the 56th session of the course Energy Law. In today's session, we will examine biofuels in India. Let us quickly recap what we have discussed in the previous week. Week 11 was dedicated to Renewable Energy Part 1, covering solar energy, wind energy, solar-wind hybrid systems, hydropower, and selected case studies on these renewable energy sources. Week 12 of the course is dedicated to emerging pillars of India's clean energy transition, with a special focus on biofuels, waste-to-energy initiatives, green hydrogen, and green buildings. In the last session, we will also examine a few selected case studies. In today's session, we will examine biofuels in India. We start by examining the biofuel potential, followed by the evolution of biofuel policy framework and the regulatory architecture. Then we will examine biofuels, energy security and climate change. In the end, we will examine the various challenges associated with biofuel governance in India. Let us briefly examine the scope and significance of biofuels in India's energy mix. Biofuels occupy a strategic position in India's clean energy transition by addressing three intersecting objectives: reducing oil import dependence, lowering transport sector emissions, and creating value from agricultural and waste biomass. Unlike electricity-based renewables, biofuels directly substitute fossil fuels in existing internal combustion infrastructure, making them particularly significant for aviation, heavy transport, and rural energy systems. From a legal and policy standpoint, biofuels represent a hybrid regulatory space situated at the intersection of energy law, agricultural policy, environmental regulation, and industrial development. Their governance therefore raises distinct challenges compared to solar or wind energy. In today's session, we will examine these challenges to see how we can make the biofuel governance better. Let us examine the biofuel potential in India. India has significant biofuel potential owing to its agrarian economy, large livestock base, rapidly expanding urban waste streams, and a growing agro-industrial sector. The availability of diverse feedstock supports multiple biofuel pathways, reduces reliance on any single resource, and enhances energy security while advancing climate and circular economy goals. Key sources of biofuel potential include agricultural residues such as rice straw, wheat straw, maize cobs, and sugarcane bagasse, available at scale and often underutilized or openly burnt. Sugar and starch-based feedstocks, particularly sugarcane and surplus grains, which underpin ethanol production through regulated diversion mechanisms that balance food security and energy needs. Use cooking oil from urban centers, offering a waste to energy pathway while addressing public health and food safety concerns. Municipal solid waste and organic waste, especially for compressed biogas and biomethane production. Animal dung and agro-industrial effluents, supporting decentralized biogas systems in rural and peri-urban areas. From a legal and regulatory perspective, this feedstock diversity complicates governance as inputs fall across agriculture, municipal administration, environmental regulation, and energy law. At the same time, it enhances system resilience against supply shocks and reinforces the need for differentiated regulatory treatment across biofuel categories rather than a uniform policy approach. Let us examine the evolution of India's biofuel policy framework. India's biofuel trajectory has been anchored in the National Policy on Biofuels, first adopted in 2009 and comprehensively revised in 2018 and 2022. The updated framework broadened eligible feedstocks and embedded biofuels within India's climate strategy, energy security goals, and circular economy approach. Key policy shifts include transition from food-based feedstocks to non-food and waste-based biomass, emphasis on waste-to-wealth and residue utilization, and integration of biofuels with ethanol blending, sustainable aviation fuel, and biogas CBG programs. These reforms reflect a move from subsidy-driven promotion to a more integrated regulatory and market-based framework. The ethanol blending program is India's most advanced biofuel initiative. Implemented through oil marketing companies and guided by executive policy decisions, it seeks to reduce crude oil imports, support farmers, and lower transport emissions. Its legal and regulatory relevance lies in procurement contracts between OMCs and ethanol producers, price setting mechanisms notified by the government, and coordination between agriculture, food, environment, and energy ministries. Accelerated blending targets demonstrate how regulatory certainty and assured markets can rapidly scale biofuel deployment. The Sustainable Alternative Towards Affordable Transportation initiative promotes compressed biogas derived from agricultural residue, organic waste, and municipal waste for use in transport and industry. Unlike ethanol, CBG sits at the intersection of energy law, waste management regulation, and gas market governance. Key regulatory challenges and opportunities include classification of biogas and CBG within existing energy and gas laws, access to gas pipelines, grids and retail infrastructure, and coordination among municipal bodies, state regulators, and central ministries. The Sustainable Alternative Towards Affordable Transportation initiative exemplifies India's shift toward decentralized, waste-based bioenergy solutions, while highlighting the need for clearer legal harmonization across sectors. Let us examine the regulatory architecture. Biofuels in India are regulated through a fragmented but evolving institutional framework reflecting their cross-sectoral nature. Governance is shared primarily among the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, which oversees blending mandates, fuel standards, and procurement through oil marketing companies. The Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, responsible for biogas, compressed biogas, and waste to energy linkages. The Ministry of Agriculture, which influences feedstock availability, pricing, and diversion of crops and residues. And state excise, pollution control and municipal authorities, which regulate production, transport, taxation, and environmental clearances. This multi-agency architecture creates regulatory challenges, particularly in licensing and approvals, where overlapping permissions increase transaction cost. Tariffs and pricing clarity, as prices are often fixed administratively rather than through independent regulation. And dispute resolution, which relies heavily on contractual terms and regular courts rather than sector-specific mechanisms. The biofuel sector lacks a single unified sectoral regulator. As a result, governance depends largely on executive policy instruments, notifications, and long-term offtake contracts, raising concerns about regulatory certainty, transparency, and investor confidence as the sector scales up. Let us examine biofuels, energy security, and climate change. Biofuels make a substantive contribution to India's energy security architecture by lowering dependence on imported crude oil and insulating the economy from price volatility and geopolitical supply disruptions. By diversifying the transport and industrial fuel mix, biofuels reduce concentration risk associated with fossil fuels and create domestically anchored energy value chains. Their reliance on agricultural residues, livestock waste, and urban organic waste also enables decentralized energy production, linking energy security with rural incomes, waste management, and regional development. From a legal and policy standpoint, These characteristics justify treating biofuels as strategic energy resources rather than short-term transition fuels. This has underpinned government interventions through mandatory blending targets, long-term offtake and procurement assurances, administered pricing, and targeted fiscal incentives. Biofuels are increasingly framed as instruments for meeting India's nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement, particularly in sectors where electrification is difficult, such as aviation, shipping, and heavy transport. Regulatory concerns include the need for robust sustainability certification to ensure emission reductions and prevent greenwashing. Managing land use change, soil health, and biodiversity impacts, especially for first generation biofuels. And addressing the water footprint of certain biofuel pathways, which is a critical concern in water-stressed regions. In response, policy and regulatory discourse increasingly favors second generation and advanced biofuels, which rely on waste residues and non-food biomass. These pathways better align biofuel expansion with climate mitigation, resource efficiency, and environmental protection, reinforcing the long-term legitimacy of biofuels within India's clean energy transition. Let us examine the key regulatory and legal challenges. The first challenge is that of feedstock availability and combating uses. A central legal challenge in India's biofuel regime concerns combating claims over feedstocks. Agricultural residues and sugarcane-based inputs are simultaneously demanded for food production, animal fodder, industrial use, and energy generation. This creates legal and policy tensions between food security obligations, farmers' interest, and energy mandates, particularly when diversion is encouraged through administered pricing or procurement guarantees. Managing these trade-offs requires clearer prioritization rules and adaptive policy design. The second challenge is relating to pricing and market design. Biofuel markets in India rely heavily on administered pricing mechanisms to provide investment certainty and ensure offtake. While this has enabled rapid scale-up, especially in ethanol blending, it raises long-term concerns about market efficiency, competition, and innovation. The absence of competitive price discovery and independent regulation may distort incentives and complicate integration with future market-based energy reforms. The next challenge is relating to infrastructure and logistics. Biofuels require dedicated infrastructure for storage, blending, transportation and distribution, much of which is governed by legacy petroleum and excise laws that are not designed for bio-based fuels. Regulatory misalignment affects pipeline access, depot modifications, safety standards, and last mile distribution, increasing compliance cost and slowing deployment. Another challenge is that of state level variations. Significant interstate variations in taxation, excise treatment, waste management rules, land use permissions, and environmental clearances directly affect project bankability. This regulatory fragmentation undermines uniform national blending targets and creates uncertainty for investors operating across multiple jurisdictions. Another important concern is that of sustainability governance. India currently lacks a comprehensive statutory framework for sustainability certification across biofuel pathways. As a result, environmental safeguards relating to life cycle emissions, land use change, water use, and biodiversity remain unevenly enforced. These gaps weaken environmental accountability and may pose challenges for international trade, carbon markets, and alignment with global sustainability standards. Let us conclude our discussion. Biofuels occupy a distinctive place in India's energy transition, operating at the intersection of agriculture, energy security, and climate policy. Biofuels development demonstrates how renewable energy expansion in India relies heavily on executive policy, contractual arrangements, and cross-sector coordination rather than a single comprehensive statute. The diversity of feedstocks and project models highlights both the resilience and regulatory complexity of the sector. Ultimately, the biofuels experience shows that achieving climate and energy goals requires legal frameworks capable of balancing sustainability, food security, market design, and federal governance within an integrated energy strategy. Let's see what's coming up. The upcoming session will explore waste to energy initiatives in India with emphasis on their legal framework, governance challenges, and place in the clean energy transition. Thank you.